Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to OpenStack. Now, we are here with two people who we are really looking forward to talking with. We are with Mark McClain, who is the CTO of Akanda, and also Henrik Rosendahl, who is the CEO of Akanda. And Akanda is a networking play that is part of the greater OpenStack ecosystem. I'm here with my host, John Janeshig, and I am Nick Chase, and we are going to jump right in. Mark, tell us a little bit about what Akanda is, so that for those of you who are going, huh?
So Akanda is a network orchestration platform that was designed with OpenStack in mind. We originally began the project back in 2012, specifically for OpenStack, and really took a look at developing the project from basically the deployer viewpoint. We want to allow multi-vendor network service orchestration, and really want to make it really simple, compatible, and open source from the beginning. We've always been Apache 2 licensed, kind of in our DNA, and so really what we've been trying to do is grow the greater adoption of the project. Akanda, the company itself, is a company designed to provide software and services around the software.
Okay, so just from a technical standpoint, how does it relate to Neutron?
So from the technical standpoint, Akanda is basically from Neutron's viewpoint, looks like a plugin, whether it's a layer 3 plugin or say a higher level service plugin like load balancing, VPN, firewall. So from the Neutron standpoint, a tenant would use Neutron as it normally would, but Akanda would be in the background orchestrating the actual changes to the data path for the particular network function.
Okay. So now you decided you just wanted to kind of get this built from the bottom up piece. Is that a little kind of weird? Because now you were the PTL of Neutron.
Yes. Yes, I was the PTL of Neutron. And so, part of that was, if you take a look at Neutron itself, it's a tenant-facing REST API that allows for multiple implementations of that API. And so the way we've always viewed Akanda is it's an implementation of, with a particular opinionated version, no different than any other kind of opinions, except for, ours was designed from OpenStack versus trying to bolt something onto OpenStack.
Ah, okay. That sounds, now what is different about that approach, you think?
I think fundamentally you don't have to go through the gaps and the steps of saying, okay, here's the OpenStack models that a tenant uses, and now I have to re-render those onto particular back-end models. Another one of the biggest differences is that we designed to be multi-vendor. A lot of the solutions out there are designed to be like, once you integrate that particular SDN controller or that particular solution, it's the only one. It doesn't really share well. It doesn't allow you to have a multi-vendor strategy, multiple implementations of the same service that can be differentiated on cost, differentiated on operational complexity. That's one of the more distinguishing factors is that Akanda supports that.
Gotcha.
So then I guess I'm looking to become a little clearer on what Akanda technology is actually doing. It sounds like, you talk about re-implementing the API. Does that mean that you're brokering transactions between, the client or the tenant and the SDN?
So in some cases, what we're doing is we're receiving the notification. Since we're a plugin to Neutron, we're not directly brokering API interaction. Neutron's handling that for us. What we're doing is handling the back-end implementation. So when Neutron will, validate the tenant API call, and then dispatch it onto Akanda to handle and then from there, we will talk to whether it's the layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or maybe a layer 7 system to then actually orchestrate it. And at the core of Akanda is an orchestration process, which we've kind of nicknamed the rug. It's kind of the escape prototype name. Originally when the project started in 2012, I think every developer gives a project a cool name, and ours came from the Big Lebowski. So there's a line in that movie about the rug really tying the room together. And so it's just kind of stuck. So, it goes with all that, bath verbs, white Russians, the whole Big Lebowski theme.
So then a command comes into Neutron. Say we want to create a tenant wants to create a subnet, and that gets copied to Akanda, or Akanda captures it. And then what does Akanda do to it? Who does Akanda talk to?
So in your instance where you had, say, a subnet call comes in, that's kind of the beauty of Akanda is it's really deployer configurable. So in some cases, if a subnet call comes in, it depends, if there's, Akanda's agnostic at the layer 2 from a layer 2 perspective. So you can have a number of different backends. You could have a full-fledged SDN controller. You could use an orchestrator that's, say, orchestrating VXLAN tunnels, GRE, Genève. And so you could really, Akanda takes a look at what the configured layer 2 subsystem is, and then either decides to take an action or just completely, defer and defer it onto the lower level system. If we were to take, say, a look at like a higher level service, like load balancing, for instance, Akanda would say, okay, hey, I'm responsible for orchestrating load balancing. It would go out and provision the appropriate resource, whether it's load balancing on hardware, load balancing, say, within a service VM, or load balancing within a container, depending on how the deployer is configured the actual service instance.
So part of making Akanda work in a cloud means making it compatible with the backends.
Yes, making compatible with a lot of backends, and that's really one of the motivating factors for us. Because at the time, it was founded at DreamHost alongside of Ceph and storage, and so
interesting.
We were looking for a way to empower us to kind of evolve our deployment over time, also to have a multi-vendor mix of technologies. So when Akanda comes in and looks for a request, it can actually match up the typological resource also with the appropriate implementation in terms of cost and licensing, depending on what the actual customer is paying for.
Wow. How interesting. So it comes with a lot of this intelligence built in, and then what happens in the inevitable case where it sees an SDN it's never seen before?
So in the case where it sees an SDN it's never seen before, there's a number of different ways. One, we're mostly L2 agnostic. In some cases where we want to kind of have a deeper integration, we can write drivers at that level. We've worked with a couple of partners in terms to improve the L2 experience and improve our hooks. Akanda itself, we deployed in production on both open source implementations for layer 2 and layer 3, like the ones that you would find in terms of OBS and Linux Bridge within OpenStack. We've also deployed in production on top of some proprietary versions from some other very well-known vendors.
So this sounds like a problem that if it exists will be temporary and will work itself out naturally over the course of time based on customer demand for particular compatibilities and seamlessnesses.
Yes.
Seamlessnesses. I like that.
I'm a marketing guy. I play with terminology.
I like seamlessness. Excellent. So now it seems like you're obviously you're very interested in the ecosystem at large. Because that's kind of the whole point. Now, so now you are also you're on the OpenStack technical committee right now. And from what I understand, there's been some news out of the technical committee regarding Akanda, as a matter of fact.
Right. So, one of the things, and one of the reasons why I continue to serve on the technical committee is supporting the broader ecosystem as a whole, growing the OpenStack ecosystem. I really believe that the 4 opens that we base our community on are very super important in terms of growing open source community. And so one of the things that we've done with Akanda is, while it's always been an open source project from the beginning, one of the things we targeted is making Akanda part of the OpenStack ecosystem officially, making it an official project, integrating it in, as an official member, not just kind of as a community member that runs alongside of the project. So within that, the company itself we're basically we work with the technical committee to contribute the project to under OpenStack governance, to be managed just like any other OpenStack project. And also along with that, we thought it was appropriate to pick a name that while we as Akanda as a company provide services and support, we didn't want the name of the project to kind of deter people from other companies who wanted to contribute. And so what we've done is contributed to the project and also renamed it to Project Astara. And so you have that distinct separation between the open source project Astara and the company Akanda. The Astara project, there's no hidden code that we're holding back. It's all the same code that we've had, the same code that we support in production. Because fundamentally, we believe in an open source community. You've got to put everything out there. Open core just doesn't really work. It's the way to build trust. It's the way to build community. And generally, what we found is that companies are willing to pay for support. They just don't like hidden gotchas. And also, it's kind of, from an open source perspective, always believed that you don't want to hold things back. It kind of feels when it doesn't feel very genuine. You're like, hey, we're open source, except for this really critical bit that performs very well. I mean, you can run open source, but by the way, we've kind of hobbled it. I mean, it doesn't really, it doesn't win you any friends. It doesn't build you any credibility or loyalty. And so from that standpoint, Project Astara is all the code. It's the same scalable production-ready code that's been running in production now for several years. So there's nothing we pulled back. So we're super excited from that standpoint. Over the summer, we've seen an increase in terms of people joining our IRC channel, asking questions, installing the project on their own. So from that side, we're really excited. We're hoping, the Astara name change further lets everybody know that we're really serious about running this as an independent, community-driven project.
Excellent.
What are the names from?
So Akanda is Sanskrit, which means oneness in the whole. And so within that, we wanted to make sure that we kind of kept kind of the Sanskrit theme. So Astara basically is earlier I kind of touched on, the original name of the orchestrator was called The Rug from The Big Lebowski. Right. So Astara loosely translates into carpet.
See, now I feel better because I was going to ask you why you didn't just call it Rug.
Yeah.
Well, apparently you did.
Yes. So we still wanted to tie the room together, and so we have our carpet and kept everything the same.
That Astara really ties the room together nicely.
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. That was going to be my next question, by the way. Why didn't you just call it The Rug? Excellent. So now, what do you think is let me back up for 1 second. So just for those who are, who may be looking going, this is good. This is what we need in OpenStack, something that really works and does all that. Let me just point out here, all you Neutron haters, this wouldn't work without Neutron, right?
Correct. I mean, this is not a replacement for Neutron. It needs Neutron's APIs. It's part of, it's a broad, we live in a broad ecosystem and we have to work with the projects around us. So, for a star to be successful and work at scale, that means Neutron has to work. That means integrating with Neutron. That means integrating with Nova if it's service VM backed instances. So, that's why we still contribute and work towards improving Neutron as well.
Excellent. I do want to just kind of back up for 1 second on the subject of contributions. I meant to say this earlier, but got distracted by the rug. For those who are not familiar, the term open core, if you want to just quickly explain what it was. You did by context, but for those who don't know.
Yeah, so commonly what you'll see in some projects with open core, which is you'll see a subset of the project released as open source. And then what happens is typically you'll have some for-profit enterprises will hold back either better implementations of, say, a particular module or maybe a proprietary version such as that's encumbered by, IP encumbrances, and so you can't release it. So, in some instances, the open core will be functional enough but not designed for scale or missing a critical component that you need to either make it easier to manage, easier to deploy, those type pieces.
Right, and Akanda is not doing that, and of course you're preaching the converted here because Mirantis is of course the same. We do the same thing. We do all our work upstream first. So, Excellent. Now, what do you think is the most important thing that OpenStack needs to be focusing on right now? Let's just take a turn to the left.
I think one of the things that OpenStack needs to be focusing on is just kind of that continuation of, how do we improve that experience? I mean, OpenStack is a pretty complex system. Over time, we've built up some technical debt in terms of, the TC this summer is kind of codified. Okay, here's our deprecation policy. It's not that it changed. It's just we kind of really officially kind of wrote it down. 5 years in, there's still
documentation.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And, that really is a jump off point in terms of taking a look at the documentation and improving the documentation around how Neutron's installed, how OpenStack's installed, talking with some of the other contributors at like mid-cycle meetups, really diving in and saying, for these particular configurations, here's how you install and deploy OpenStack. I think one of the challenges is OpenStack is such an open ecosystem that if you talk to deployers who are running a different mix of technology than, say, what's run through the gate, sometimes you run into some interesting challenges. And so, how we document that, how we kind of work through those, anytime you change up the mix of implementations, you always kind of introduce a little bit of jitter into the universe. And sometimes that manifests itself in some interesting challenges. So I think growing OpenStack, growing the community base. Also, if you take a look at the leadership, it's kind of exciting to see in terms of the new people joining leadership ranks within OpenStack in terms of, PTL elections. We had, the recent ones are very, had lots of contested elections, which is a good thing and a healthy thing for our community, as well as the number, of new entrants into the TC election process. That's super exciting times.
Excellent. Yes, it's terrible when senility is a horrible thing. Anyway, so in terms of these, when you get these different details put together, I just want to throw in a plug here that's what the RefStack project is all about, correct?
Yeah, so the RefStack is really making sure that the deployments are coherent, that the implementations are consistent as a way of grading them, and not what grading, but self-evaluation in terms of making sure they meet the criteria. As a matter of fact, one of the employees of Akanda is the former PTL of the RefStack project. So upstream standards are something we definitely believe in.
Great. And Catherine Dieppe, who is the current PTL, I believe, we're going to have her on the podcast in the next couple of weeks, I think, to talk about RefStack and how now when you run RefStack, you can submit your results so that the community can see, well, what is standard, what actually works, what doesn't work, and what pieces are people actually using.
Right.
So, Henrik, I apologize. We haven't really asked you any questions. So what is kind of your perspective on all of this?
Well, obviously my charter for running the company at Akanda is balancing the open source and OpenStack community aspect of it with running a business, right? And so, as I'm out and fundraising with Mark and on Sand Hill Road, the prevalent question you get all the time is, hey, but how are you actually going to make any money? This is all free and good. And so really, that's the challenge that you're facing every day from an open source standpoint. And luckily from our end, some of the big networking vendors have trained customers well in the past to pay for support and services. So this ends up being sort of enterprise selling with big ticket items for sure. Which calms down the sort of the investors in general. The thing about Akanda and Astara specifically is much like what Nicira did to VMware, it was creating sort of like an independence of a hardware dominated agenda. Akanda and Astara specifically can do that to the OpenStack community. Create something that is hardware independent. It's actually made to tie together all the different high level services from different vendors but largely be independent of, say undue pressure.
Gotcha. I think it's quite ironic that we're talking about how the OpenStack, but not the OpenStack, but the open source model of charging for, support is partly successful because the proprietary vendors have trained companies to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is ironic, but nonetheless, it
works. Yes, yeah. It's ironic, but it works. All right. So my big question, and I almost always ask this question, but so are there any questions that you wish someone would ask? Things that aren't being talked about that you wish were?
I think probably the biggest thing in terms of, why contribute another project into the OpenStack ecosystem? When there are, why would you not want to make Neutron better or change Neutron fundamentally? Kind of comes up at times. And, from our perspective, Neutron itself is best when it works as with the API services and works on that side. I think within our ecosystem, there's room for lots of different implementations because each cloud's a little different. From ours, we shine very strongly. You want a multi-vendor. You want supports multi-vendor orchestration, which is a little bit different, and it allows you to, within the little sub-projects, be very opinionated on certain things. The beauty of our community is that consensus is good for the big picture items, but choice is also good on the other side in terms of sharing ideas, also the ability to implement, the ability to experiment and share and have that opportunity to kind of put all the different Lego bricks together, but also be opinionated in how they fit together to really service the end user and deployer, because fundamentally, I think every OpenStack cloud is a little bit different, and having that framework to deploy and it can really tailor it in and really dial that OpenStack. And so ultimately, you can deliver, the applications which are running on top of the cloud.
Sounds great. John, did you have any final remarks?
No, I have to say this is a fascinating product, and I'm going to be very interested in watching as you continue evolving it, and hopefully get my hands on it and get to play around with it some.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to just take the opportunity now to thank Mark McClain and Henrik Rosendahl from Akanda, and also, of course, my illustrious co-host, John Janchik. Thank you very much. I'm Nick Chase, and we are OpenStack now, and we will be back next week. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.